Hello and welcome. So, given the equation, find all the information, then plot it. Alright, so let's go right into it. First off, we have x-intercepts. Those are the solutions to x, meaning if you set your y to 0, because every x-intercept is written as comma 0, so y is 0. Here's your y, that's f of x, so that means we have 0 equals negative x plus 5, x plus 7. Now, everywhere you see an x, you set that to 0, so we have x plus 5, set that to 0, x plus 7, set that to 0, and we get x plus 5 equals 0, x plus 7 equals 0, and undo addition with subtraction, right? Subtract the 5 over, and we get x equals negative 5, and negative 7 when we subtract the 7 to both sides for the other equation. So that means we have negative 5, comma 0, and negative 7. Comma 0, x-intercept's done. Factor form's really good for that. Okay, now keep in mind that if you're getting some errors, syntax error, invalid notation error, any errors, make sure we're keeping an eye out. Make sure you have a comma between the parentheses, and make sure you're using commas and not periods or anything else. Just keep an eye on that. If an error persists, I'd probably ask your teacher to make sure you know or that you're putting it in correctly. Alright, so next we have what is the coordinate point of a vertex. Remember, vertex is that turning point, the maximum or minimum of the graph. So if you have a vertex, here, let's say we have x-intercepts at 1 and 3, the vertex is that turning point there at the bottom, and it's in the middle of your intercepts. Meaning that if the x-intercepts are at 1 and 3, what's the middle of 1 and 3? 2. That means that whatever the middle of those two values are is going to be the middle value of your vertex. What's the middle of 5 and 7? 6. So middle of negative 5, negative 7 is negative 6. Arithmetically, how you find that is you take your two x values, combine them, and half it. So we end up at negative 12 divided by 2, which is negative 6. There you go. But that's only the x-coordinate of the vertex. How do you find the y? Well, that's not too bad. There's a couple of ways you could really focus on it. The main way, what you always want to do whenever you have a coordinate point, alright, is you essentially could say, alright, well, if I know that the x value is negative 6, because it's x comma y, you have x's, plug in x. You plug in x, you get out y. Y is f of x, so if you plug x in, you will get y back. Alright, so let's plug in our x value. We have negative 6 as an x value, so that means our y equals negative times negative 6 plus 5, parentheses, negative 6 plus 7. Right? Yes, you do want that negative at the very front. All you're doing is you're just copying that exact same equation, but just negative 6 in for the x's. Alright, and then you just combine it. So we have a negative times negative 6 plus 5, negative 1. Negative 6 plus 7, 1. What's a negative times a negative? Positive. So then we have a positive 1 times 1, which is 1. So if you plug in negative 6, we get 1 back. There's your vertex. Axis of symmetry is essentially like the middle fold line of the quadratic. If you were to fold it where you get equal amount on both sides, that's the axis of symmetry. You'll notice that it hits through the x-axis, so it will be a x equals. Okay, and you'll also notice it's running through the vertex. That's always true. For a quadratic, the axis of symmetry will always be through the vertex, which means that whatever the x-coordinate of your vertex is the value we use for the axis of symmetry. We have negative 6 for our x value, so negative 6 is the value for the axis of symmetry. Done. Finished. Okay. Now, coordinate point of the y-intercept. Remember, you write a y-intercept by writing something comma 0. Oops, I just flipped that. 0 comma something, right? Where 0 is in for x, and then you need to find the y value. That's why it's called the y-intercept. That's what you're finding. Alright? Well, this is exactly how we just found the vertex, as we know x is 0. Plug in 0. So that means our y value will equal negative times 0 plus 5 times 0 plus 7. 0 plus 5 is 5, so we have a negative times 5 times 7. 5 times 7, 35, times a negative, negative 35. Nothing too crazy. All right, there's your y-intercept. Last but not least, you look at the very, very, very front number, the determined direction of opening. Here we have a negative. That's technically -1, which is a negative number. It's facing down. That's it. Now you just plot all of it on a graph. So -5, 0. We go -5, 0. -7, 0. There's your x-intercepts. Vertex is going to be at -6, 1. Be very careful as that your scale, you'll notice, goes up in even numbers. It's a little blurry, sorry about that. Okay, meaning 2, 4, 6, 8, so on and so forth, which means that -6, 1, it's going to be right there. It's between 0 and 2. Be very careful on this scale, guys. Alrighty. So that's our vertex. Next we have x equals -6 for the axis of symmetry. Let's graph that one last. Y-intercept is 0, -35, which is between -34 and 36. So there's your next point down there. And it'll be going down, which makes sense because if you were to connect the dots, it'd be facing down. Alright, so axis of symmetry. This is the one that throws students off the most. You want to use the line tool for the axis of symmetry. Now we know the axis of symmetry is going to be essentially a line that's running all the way through x equals -6. Okay, there's the axis of symmetry. How you plot it is that the line tool has these two little red dots, right? Red dot, red dot. Okay, those red dots don't necessarily mean these blue points. The red dots are just placers for the line. Those are just two points that are on the line, somewhere on the line, anywhere on the line. You could choose the x-axis and the vertex. That'll work. Or you could choose 2 points down here. That'll work. Or you can choose maybe both your points up there. Sure. Or maybe 1 point at the top and 1 at the bottom. It doesn't matter where those 2 little red dots on the tool are going, as long as it's just 2 places along the line. That's the bare minimum requirement for that. Okay? But otherwise, that's the last thing you need to plot, and you are finished. Alright, thanks for watching.